Welcome back to this episode of Repair Pro Tips. In today's episode, we're going to be changing the water pump on a 2020 Jeep Cherokee, the little Cherokee, not the Grand Cherokee. It is a 2-liter turbo engine. It is not the 3.2-liter Pentastar that they normally put in it. So there I just gave you some shop key info on where all your different plug points are and bolts are. You have 3 water outlets on the back of the water pump. One goes to your lower radiator hose, the other 2 go to your EGR cooler. I'm going to zoom in here and show you the location of the water pump. It sits just below the AC compressor there. So, with that in mind, before you even get started on all this, you're going to want to have the AC evacuated if you're doing this yourself. If you work at a shop that has the equipment, you need to evacuate the AC. So we're going to push these tabs in and pop these lines off the back of the airbox first. And then after we get those off, we're going to worry about getting the mass airflow sensor plug off. And then there's a couple little push tabs that hold the wire to the airbox. You're going to also have to disconnect those. So we got that all disconnected. And now down here, you're going to need to take this spring clamp and pop it back off that hose, and then pull that hose off the turbo and just flip it up out of your way. Now we have a plug here for, I believe this is the PCV valve of some sort. You're going to need to pull that lock tab back and disconnect that. Then you have a push style connection like you had on the back of the airbox for that end of the PCV hose. And then on this side, you have a ring at the base of it that you're going to need to squeeze. I had to do it with 2 hands. I had to put the phone down. I don't have my tripod. And then there's also a small vacuum line, or I don't know, I'm calling it a vacuum line, goes to the smaller port. You need to remove that from that valve as well. Once you get this all out of the way, you can finally loosen the 8mm worm clamp that holds the intake tube onto the turbo, and then you can finally remove the whole top of the airbox. So now we're down to the lower portion of the airbox. What we're going to need to do is get this hose off of the airbox. So I'm going to take a pair of pliers and just give it a little twist or two. And then I did need 2 hands to pull it off. So we got that removed. So now to remove the airbox, you got a push tab there and an 8mm back here. So you want to loosen up that 8mm and then pop it off the push tab, and you'll be able to pull that whole lower airbox out. So now you can see the air conditioning compressor. If you don't have a 1, 2, 3, 4 YF system to properly discharge this compressor, please take it to a shop and have them suck it down. There is a sensor on the front of the AC compressor that has a lock tab, and then 2 nuts that hold the oil dipstick tube in. Back here is your high side port. That's where you're going to, or I'm sorry, your low side port, not your high side port. That's where you're going to evacuate the system from. It's very important not to just let this stuff escape into the atmosphere. It's not environmentally friendly to do so. So once you get those nuts off, you can pull the dipstick tube out, get that out of your way. And I'm going to show you here, the lock tab's actually on the bottom of the plug, so it's kind of difficult to get at, but it is possible if I don't lose the wire trying to show you. There we go, the little red lock tab. And you have 2, I believe those were 13mm. You got a little push pin on that wiring harness there that you need to remove. And the AC lines are the 13mm I was talking about. And then also the bolts are 13mm. And then down here on the tensioner, I used a belt tensioning tool. I'll show it later on and link it in the description. So now that I've got the AC lines off, you can't really see where the mounting bolts are except maybe one of them. One's hidden back behind where the AC lines go on. There's 3 in total. This first one is like this. It's more of a stud because there's a nut that goes over the end. Here's the tensioner tool that I said I'd link in the description. And then also you're going to need an E7 external Torx for this other bolt. There's where it sits on the compressor to pull that stud out. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to slip the compressor out. And the bottom bolt is, I believe, a 13 or 12 millimeter. Once you get those all out, you'll be able to slide the compressor out after you have the belt off and everything. Most of that's pretty self-explanatory. So now I'm pointing to the 3 bolts that hold the water pump to the actual engine itself. You got 3 up there. You got your upper EGR hose, your lower radiator hose down there, and then you also have some wiring that you need to pop the clip out of and just kind of flop it out of your way. And then right around where that bracket is for the wiring is a nut and bolt for the water pump as well. Now, it's best to try to access the lower ones from the bottom. So you're going to need to take that plastic heat shield or shield off. Oh, I hope that has nothing to do with the water pump. Yeah, it probably did. You know what? That's probably a leak from the water pump. All right, so now I have the water pump out of there. The bolts for the water pump really aren't that difficult to get out once you're down to this part. But there are these 2 little inserts. You got to make sure you get them out of the block of the engine. I had a tough time getting the one out. They're steel. The engine and the water pump housing are aluminum, so, you know, none of it meshes well. So once you get that out, you can line up those 2 pins, get everything set up, make sure your gasket's seated right, get all your bolts back together. Then you're going to start going in the reverse of how you took everything apart. So what we're going to do next is get all our hoses on. I got the lower and all that stuff back on and all the plugs. And then after you put the AC back on, you're going to need to get it recharged. But for the sake of being able to drive it, you can bleed out the coolant. Just don't turn your AC on. And that's what I'm doing at this point in the video. And once I finish this up, I'm going to recharge the AC. And then take it for a test drive, make sure everything's good and it's building pressure. It's sort of self-bleeding, but it does help to have the cap off while you're doing this and have a bleeding funnel like I'm using. So now that I've showed you everything, here's the end result. AC is all charged back up. Coolant stopped off. It's running properly.